Hello everybody and welcome back once again to Let's Play Suzerain. Yes, here we are, our second playthrough of course, with our President Rayne, Mr. Greedy, Mr. Power Hungry, Mr. I am Swordland, you know, who wants to promote Swordland's independence and, yeah, very much a nationalist, shall we say. So this is interesting, this is new, didn't get this message the last time we played because we didn't pick certain options last time, but we opened with this piece of, this piece of news in a briefing. Chancellor Hegel of Valsland has released a statement urging calm on the Rumberg-Swordland dispute. Climbing tensions should immediately be de-escalated to protect peace and prosperity of... look, we didn't start it. You know, if we have to finish it, so be it, but we did not start this. Is our mantra. And it's rather interesting, because we'll see a little bit more about Hegel later, or if you've watched the previous LP, how he reacted in certain events. If he's urging calm, something has got to be seriously wrong, because he doesn't strike me as a kind of calm kind of person. Which is interesting. But anyway, there you go. That was interesting news. I haven't seen these other two, but Rumberg condemns closure. It's all right for you to close your consulate. But it's not all right for us to close ours. Is that how it is? Publicly condemning the closure of our consulate in Dome. Oh dear. So us picking the option to fight fire with fire is raising tensions between our countries. Who would have thought? Lenkerg. Incident at Sol's mansion. Basically a boat gets too close, I think. Yeah, warning shots were fired. And then then the boat... Did it then... I can't remember actually, where is it, Lenkerg? Oh, I've missed it now. I'm sure it then said that the boat eventually went closer. And they had tea and biscuits. That's something like that. But yeah. Security fears for Sol. Promising industrial potential due to the high-speed railway project that we are in the process of completing. And there's a protest from the people that like environment. Well, we're not that fussed about environment right now. We're more fussed about recession. Industry brings jobs, money, you know, bit of smog. It's a necessary evil, isn't it? Right. News. Minister Manger's rural development vision. He's got a vision in Grooney to develop the rural region there, strengthen food security, bolster the economy. He'll come to us with this proposal, no doubt, in due course. Cooperation with Rumberg is an economic imperative. So these are all kind of new, because I haven't gone down this line last time, so this is all interesting to me. Known for its large economy and access to two leading energy corporations, Riesian Oil, rolls off the tongue, and Gas Corporation, and Royal Emerald Energy, ripe for collaboration. They want us to welcome partnerships with our enemy, do they? Well, just because you want to line your pockets, old money moguls, you know, doesn't mean that we should sacrifice the security of our country to do so, I'm afraid. Who are these idiots talking about? I digress. Right, these are not my own views, by the way. This is obviously Anton Rayne's views. Job freeze sparks fears for Gassom's financial stability. Okay. Well, let's see about that. And growing discontent over the past electoral campaign finance bill. The workers' public of Bloody are unhappy. Why? Because you're not in the 10%. That's not my problem. If you want electoral campaign funding, you got to get in the top 10%. It's simple, isn't it? If you're not in the top 10%, you don't get funding. Not my problem. Not my problem, I'm afraid. There you go. Geopolitical Ayatollah plan, all very boring. There you go. What's not boring is this upcoming meeting we're about to have with Chief Justice Hawker, which I have spent the past 2-3 days thinking about on and off, about what I'm going to do here. Okay, so we started preparatory work on the railway, starting next month. It's all very good. Excellent. Crack on, please. Otherwise, what's his face, Mr. Tusk, will be having words. Don't think I'm in your pocket just because you've given me a lucrative bribe. Doesn't mean I can't still kick your backside if you don't pull your end of the bargain, isn't it? We say puffing on our cigar whilst sipping Earl Grey. Right, excellent. So, where are we? Okay, so, yes, meeting with Chief Justice, also Hawker. We'll play it by ear, we'll see what conversation lines come up. I'm kind of still torn about what I'm going to do, and I could sit here for 10 minutes debating this. But I don't know which way this conversation is going to go, given the choices that we've picked so far. It might go completely differently to how I've experienced it in the past, so we'll see. But Mr. Hawker clearly wants to discuss something. Let's see what he wants. Here we go. The administration had been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues that were facing the country, as they should be. That's what we're paying them for. Well, the taxpayers are probably paying them for, but nonetheless. The department sent several documents which required my signature so they could start working on the new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, my hand was getting tired, so I closed my eyes to relax for a brief moment. Another long day. Even though I really wished to leave the palace for the day, Lucian had earlier told me that the Chief Justice wanted to speak to me. We planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what subject he would raise. I poured a whiskey and took a sip. Ah, bliss. It eased my mind a little. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good evening, sir. Ah. Have a seat. Raise our drink. No, we're not quite that bad. I've just got visions of us with our feet on the desk, kicking back, cigar in mouth. Raise our glass as Lucian walks in. Come in, Lucian. You want one? Have a seat. He sat on a chair near my desk. I'm sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier, sir. The Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new constitution. He will be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Grassi to the meeting. We shouldn't take them lightly. I think he's here to test the waters. I agree. They were probably trying to get you to their side. We should... There were 3 knocks on the door. Lucian checked his watch. He looked rather worried. Timekeeping failing you today, Lucian? You wanted a briefing with me before they arrived. You should have arrived earlier. Unless, of course, they've arrived early. Livia opened the doors. Chief Justice Orso Hawker and Judge Heron Garassi entered the room. Good evening, Mr. President. It's great to see you. Evening. Good to see you, gentlemen. Good to see you indeed. Also gestured at the sofa in the office. May I? Please, let's have a seat, gentlemen. Let's be civilized round here. Whiskey, anyone? We all took our seats on 2 opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. Also glanced at the glass of whiskey. Celebrating something, Mr. President? I was just trying to relax. Our man needs his drink. I understand. How were your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. I'm doing very well. No need to worry, Mr. Grassi. That's great to hear, Mr. President. We also think you've been doing a good job so far, considering all that's happening around us with shootings near the palace and soldiers on our borders. It is indeed a troubling time. We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why we are here? Please, I would not wish to make assumptions, Mr. Hawker. Please enlighten us. Well, we know you are working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the Constitution needs to be updated, sir. I'm sure you are well aware of the public demand and our circumstances. And the public demanded to give more powers to the President? Spare me the lecture. I know you have different ideas. Even if your proposal passes the Assembly, I will make sure it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. Come now, Mr. Hawker. We can figure something out, I'm sure. We can. If you decide to give us a listen. Mr. President, you seem to be only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reasons of our stance. Oh, please explain. We are protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient, it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. Swordland has more important problems and threats that we face instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution. We have a potential war within our borders. Also signalled Heron with his hand to let him speak instead. Mr. President, I know that you are a busy man, so I will make this quick. We all know that Swordist security forces found stashes of Rumburgian weaponry in their hideouts of Bluedish separatists. KA-74s are roaming inside Swordland at this moment. As much as Rumburg poses a direct threat, now it's clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It's not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing after the shooting of Bernard Circus. Communists rising with the support of United Quintana, the chaos is imminent for Swordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions yet. We clearly need more funding for our security forces for the days to come. Yes, well, actually, I will be increasing the security budget shortly. We haven't had the budget meeting just yet, but it is at the top of my list of priorities. Ah, I am relieved to hear that. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed Bluedish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Bluedia? Everybody knows that. You know what that means. Do you remember the vote of the Workers' Party in the last election? Or what is this all about? The only reason they are not in the Assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connections to the paramilitary Bluedish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that the Bluedish separatists can be legitimized in the Assembly to achieve their aims of independence? I am not working with the reformists, Mr. Hawker. I am aware, yet you're proceeding with your own version of the changes to the Constitution, aren't you? I am. The new Constitution will not be weaker, but stronger. You already have the power of the decrees, Mr. President. As long as we work together, we can allow you to enact major changes with the presidential decrees. But I wish the only issues were the Bluedish terrorists and Rumburg. The reformists' suggested changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Quintana, into the Assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? I suggest you are saying that the reformists are working for the foreign powers. Unless my powers of deduction fail me. Haven't you been briefed by your security team? Maybe you should suspect them as well. We should take the necessary measures against communist and brutish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against a possible conflict with Rumberg. And, of course, not fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They are clearly plotting to weaken the President and our whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. Oh, please explain, Mr. Hawker. The person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arcasia. Arcasia is aggressively growing their influence around the world, and now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amidst a chaotic period in Swordland. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the Constitution. How would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcasia? Mr. Gallard, we know it. He has been in Arcasia many times because it's been documented. But what would you think if he had been making hidden flights to the country? I need to know this. Please explain. He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcasia last year, where they held the Conference on Economic Development in Volatile Regions. Right around that time, he started to influence the masses into believing that our constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor was he an official guest of the conference. We believe that he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. I also have a couple of more photos of him that were taken in Arcasia in different cities. One is from a couple months back. Again, none of it is documented. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcasian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. How did you find out about this? Many Solists were already following his leads for quite some time, Mr. President. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. It contained official documents from the Swordish Border Guard with highlighted dates that showed no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken in the conference in Arcasia, as well as remarks by lesbian and Arcasian citizens who claimed to have seen him with Arcasian businessmen around the same dates. There was also an official transcript of one of his speeches where he claimed to be in Benfey on the dates of the conference in Arcasia, where he was spotted. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they are real, Mr. Gallard. These seem to suggest that Arcasia is behind the reformists. Their demands will only benefit Arcasia. They want us to have a weaker administration while we face all these threats. This is clearly a plot against Swordland. I bet Rumberg is part of their plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. Now you understand the reasons of our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors, who clearly have not given you this vital information. Lucian gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. There is not much to think or check. This is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure that the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. You want me to declare an emergency? Of course, we cannot wait for the processes of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise your presidential powers for a fast and effective solution, which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to our security forces to deal with these issues. We must officially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on the Articles 57 and 58, which gives the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared, and you have our word on that. Sir, I think that is going a bit too far. We shouldn't escalate things so fast. Mr. President, why don't we talk in private? Only two of us. We can devise a plan together. I know how we can use the Constitution to our advantage. It would be more effective if Mr. Gallard and Mr. Garassi leave the room before we discuss it. Sir, I advise against it. I like your idea, Mr. Hawker, but I'd rather plan it together. Right. Okay, so this is the way up. So we continue to press on with the Constitution, turn the justices away, have to go through trying to get a majority vote in the Assembly, considering that we will only have the support of the NFP, not the reformists. Getting that majority is going to be very difficult, and we're going to have to unify the party behind our reforms. Now, the reforms that we're going to propose to increase our own power, we already have a lot of power. We can veto veto things. We can use the decrees. It's already still in a state that was good enough for Sol. So, to be honest, if we were going to do anything with the reformations, we might be trying to weaken certain areas to strengthen others. We could obviously remove the Supreme Court out of the constitutional reform process, but would there be a need to if we have them on side? So that is a very difficult path to take, and not only have to get the majority, we have to then get the support of the justice. There's a lot of hurdles to jump through for probably not much further gain in power with a constitutional change. The other thing is obviously people want a constitutional change, so if we could pass it, it would probably look really good on us that we have a unified party behind us. We've enacted these changes, ultimate sign and height of power. This alternative option, with evidence against Richter, declaring a state of emergency, which is what Kibbener wanted in a recent newspaper article, if you remember, and he'd certainly support it. The Chief Justice on side seems like the constitution we have is suitable enough. We've got an emergency situation going on, which we can justify with the KA-74, the Rumberg situation, the riots that are going on right now. Clearly it is a time for emergency. Us taking swift emergency action stands us in good stead in terms of being a strong leader. We need to do it now. We need to stamp it out. We need to crack on. No dithering about. And, we're doing this for the good of the country. And we have the support of the Chief Justice of all people. So, on the balance of things, as much as I quite would still like to press on, and it's a pity I haven't activated torpor mode here or turned it off so that I could continue down this line for the playthrough, but off camera proceed down the other line. I think, thinking about it logically, I think we have come to the conclusion, Mr. Rayne here, that we have enough power to do what we want. Still got the majority in the Assembly. We've got legitimate reasons to proceed perhaps down this pathway. We've got evidence against Richter which could throw the whole reform process into disarray if it's proven to be right, and he's given us evidence. It hasn't been fact-checked, but hey. This seems the easier path. and a way to actually get out of the whole constitutional reform process anyway, which is a whole hassle, a lot of work involved. We're kind of not the kind of person that strikes me as we're going to knuckle down and get things done. Yes, we've worked hard to get to the position of power that we're in, but we're here now. We're sipping back and drinking whiskey at our desk. Why would we want to go through a whole constitutional reform process, try to unite a party, meet leaders of wings, do this, do that, do the other, convince that, bribe here, twist an arm there? It's too much effort. This could actually be the path of least resistance. So, when the evidence and the conversation has played out, and Hawker's well aware that the Constitution we're not working with the reformists, we're trying to change it to give us a little bit more power. He's aware of that too, but he's still not happy with it, which is, I'm glad that this was mentioned in the conversation. You know what? It doesn't seem like such a bad idea. I mean, Lucian's against it, which, Lucian's a very smart man, and you should take his advice pretty well. He's drafted a constitution with loopholes and stuff, so he's done a lot of work already on it. But the more we think about it, the more we feel that actually this is definitely a viable option. And not only viable, but a preferential option, I think. But we would want Lucian involved in the process. If we're going to make this work, we're going to need to make it work properly. So, yeah, I like your idea, but we're going to plan it together, Lucian included. Oh, we've gone down the line now. Oh dear, here we go. Glad to hear that we're on the same page, Mr. President. But I will have to insist on the private talk. We wouldn't ask Lucian in front of Hawker here. Look like we're some kind of, bumbling mess. Oh, we can't do anything without Lucian say so. Fine. Fair enough. Gentlemen, will you leave us briefly? Lucian stood up as Orso gave him a smile. Heron paid his respects and left with Lucian, leaving me and Orso alone. So, Mr. President, if you stop the Reform Committee meetings immediately and focus on the real threats, I will guarantee you we will manage the reformists together. You must eliminate these threats, both internal and external. An emergency act can help you do that. We cannot trust anyone in the administration either. Tell me more about the legal details of an emergency act. According to Article 58, if public security and order are seriously disturbed or endangered within the Republic of Swordland, the President may modify and suspend parts of the Constitution subject to confirmation by the Supreme Court to determine the validity of the declaration of a state of emergency. Okay, so which parts of the Constitution can we modify or suspend? That is kind of a grey area. The Constitution states that no state shall, in the case of national emergency, modify or suspend the rights of freedom defined in Article 100 of the Constitution, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. But such imminent danger. That can definitely be argued to be the case. Exactly. It can definitely be argued that we are under such imminent danger because of Rumberg, not to mention United Contana's support for a communist coup in Swordland, as well as Franz Richter's involvement with Arcasia, which is definitely connected to all of these problems. And of course, that is up to the Supreme Court to decide, so that is not a problem. And how can we effectively silence the opposition? We may need increased surveillance on our political rivals to find out about their connections and plots. Bringing unlimited detention would allow you to arrest people as necessary, such as Mr. Richter. And what if the investigations cannot find anything incriminating? The information that I gave you can be enough, depending on what parts of the Constitution you'll modify. In an emergency, anything is possible, Mr. President. I see a smirk beginning to form on President Rayne's face. Amending the Constitution as it currently stands at will, under the guise of a state of emergency? He's beginning to like the sound of this. The Supreme Court will support your decisions. Let's talk about the details of this Emergency Act. You must first justify the Emergency Act. We need to have at least one target that we can blame the conflicts on. They will be declared as a national security threat, and this would allow us to prosecute their members or people connected to them. There are obvious connections between the Bludish separatists and Rumberg, and the separatists have clear connections to the Workers' Party of Bludia. They should be declared a national security threat, and the party should be banned. This could be an issue. How much evidence is there? If we've got this option, then clearly there isn't, right? We've got evidence against Richter. There's definitely connections between the Bludish separatists and Rumberg, I would suggest. I don't want to dead-end this option if we pick this option, if that makes sense. But I kind of want to challenge them on this to see whether there actually does he think there is enough evidence. So, okay. So Bloods will be Bloods. Okay, is that your evidence? But let's not forget about the socialists. Red Youth must also be our target. They are plotting a communist revolution in Swordland with a clear funding from United Quintana. And now they took to the streets after the death of Bernard Circus. There are already clashes and protests on the streets which must be dealt with before it gets out of hand. You can also justify an action against the Young Swords. After all, they started all this mess with the commies and they killed a man right near the Maroon Palace. That can be considered a declaration of war against the state itself. I would be much more inclined to declare war against the Red Youth, simply because we are, now Young Sword, history, Red Youth, on the streets, causing mayhem, overly biased. I mean, they're both as bad as each other, really. I need to think about this. Let's see if there's any further options. I don't think there is much to think. But let's talk about how we can deal with them. We should eliminate the threats on our streets first. The police should have the authority to disperse crowds as necessary. We also have to keep the streets clean from the socialist thugs and Bludish separatists. We should give more authority to the police regarding their use of force. They should be able to stop and frisk as necessary, especially in Bludish neighborhoods. Stop and frisk at will. Stop and frisk based on suspicion. That's kind of like what we've got in the UK. Define suspicion and how loosely you can justify suspicion. That's the question. That would look better, in principle, to the people. Although, slip in a caveat. Make sure, when you're justifying your suspicion, make sure it's a good story. Okay, nod. The police will also need permissions for increased surveillance against these organisations. They should be able to search properties without warrants, and wiretapping should be permissible beyond its current limits. They will also need to be able to act swiftly. If a person is suspected of crimes against the national security of Swordland, the police should be able to detain them without trial. We cannot allow them proper trials anyway. Okay, continue to nod. Oh, this is really bad. This is excessively bad. I mean, I know we want power and everything, but this much? Police search at will, search properties without warrants, beat people with sticks. This is like too far. This is too far. I mean, we want the support of the people where we can get it. This is... holy hell. I nodded. There are also the external threats we must face. Rumburg has acted hostile in the past, and now they are arming the Blues. We must cut all ties with them. They need to be embargoed. Their citizens must be barred from entering Swordland. We must erase all of their influence, weaken their trade, and give them a message. Yes, they are indeed our biggest enemy. And of course, we need to prepare our army in any case. They have a very powerful military, and they seem to have plans on our soil. Then there are the new superpowers. Both are influencing our nation to be in their spheres. It seems Arcasia already bought Mr. Richter and possibly is behind all of this. And United Contana is funding Swordish communists against our state, but we cannot bow down to the superpowers. Swordland must stand tall. We will not bow, Mr. Hawker. I know we won't. They tried to divide Swordland before, but we came out stronger after the Civil War. And we will come out of this stronger again. I do hope so, Mr. President. It will all be up to you. Also looked at the clock in the office and then outside the window. Mr. President, I have taken too much of your time already. I will be reaching out again after you dissolve the Reform Committee and end the pursuits for reform. So this is where we make the decision. Right, this is interesting because now we've heard exactly what the plot entails and what this state of emergency will entail. It puts a slightly different spin. So the options that we've got is we go against we go against Hawker. We press on with the reforms, but as I said before, it's a very difficult task. We don't have a majority of the USP on this because of the reformists wanting probably more reform than we're willing to concede on, unless we enact loopholes, which could be possible. There's also the option of, I'm assuming, you never know, bribing or cajoling Albin Clavin, the reformist leader of our party, threatening maybe, we'll see, to get them on side. So, you know, the Conservatives I'm not so worried about because most of our reforms will be, they'll be fine with. So if we can unify the party, then we're fine. We've got the NFP on side. We will do, certainly, with our reforms. So that's the first thing. Can we sway the judges? The old guard will be against it, as will Nia now as well. So that's quite important because she was with us last time. So that's going to be tricky too. So that's a lot of hoops to jump through, and we're not guaranteed to pass the reform. And we certainly wouldn't want to be seen as a president that can't get that done if we start down that road. The second route then is to stop the reforms under the guise of an emergency, which is pretty easy to justify really. But then it's the after effects. Giving police free rein, becoming a very police state, searching without warrants, wiretapping, gathering evidence, stop and search at will. I mean, the people are going to be furious, surely. As for the Blues, complete and utter targeted. Red Youth as well. but is somebody that is country first. This is a strong line that we are taking for the good of the country. We preserve, well, the Constitution already gives us a lot of power anyway. We have the court on side if we need them again for anything. It'll certainly stamp out the unrest one way or another. Either that or it'll escalate it and end up in a full riot situation. So that's the two choices that our president is having to consider here. We have gone down the line of fighting fire with fire when it comes to Rumberg, and so balancing the two things together, we were willing to listen to his suggestions. Yes, it's maybe taken us back a little bit, some of the things that he's asked for. Maybe we might be able to concede on some things and not push all the way with others. That might be a possibility. Like with the reforms, we can pick what parts of the Constitution we amend, how much we amend them for this emergency. I reckon we will get that option when it comes to it. So we can kind of maybe soften the blow to some degree, but we don't want to soften it too much because we want it to be effective. So yeah, I think we're still going to proceed onwards. And if we have to fall on our sword because things go completely wild, well, it was fun while it lasted. We'll take our profits from our investment from Gus and run into the sunset. Why not? We're going to have to really be careful about not getting killed here, assassinated. So this is going to be interesting. This is a completely different stance now, and we're going down a completely different line to before. So this also makes it highly intriguing. So after pondering, Mr. Hawker is sat at the edge of his seat. As the president keeps him waiting, he's probably reclined back in his chair. Excuse me, Mr. Hawker, don't mind if I spark one up, do you? This is a big decision, bear with me. Want one? No? Never mind. And you know what, Mr. Hawker? Having pondered this and weighed up the pros and cons of both options available to me, I'm going to take you up on your deal. I mean, I don't know what I was going to say for the economy, but hey. We've done it. We've said it. We've stubbed our cigar out and we're probably ready to shake hands on the deal. That's great to hear. He slowly got up from the sofa. It was great talking to you. And I am looking forward to our cooperation, Mr. President. We shook hands on the deal. This also meant that I made an unholy alliance with the old guards. Aye. Yeah, I'm really wishing that I had remembered to disable the torpor mode thing so that I could have saved before this conversation and taken it down the other route. Because I'm kind of I do want to see how that would have panned out if we could have tried to have united our party to increase our power. Would have been interesting. But as I said, given the balance of the two options and such difficulty and umpteen hoops to jump through in getting the reforms passed, this, definitely seems the easier option. We've already got the cooperation. We just have to shake a hand and buff. The wheels are set in motion. He's already come up with a plan. We just have to sign off on him. And it's definitely makes us look strong. We're taking decisive action against all of our enemies, external and internal. And if you can't see that, then you're an enemy of the state. Have a good evening, Mr. Rayne. Good evening, Mr. Hawker. He left the room. After he left, I called in Lucian and explained to him about my decision to stop the reforms and called Peter to dissolve the committee on the next day. This was a point of no return. You bet your bottom dollar. Newsflash! Hawker in Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of this visit. Historically, Mr. Hawker does not frequent the place unless for official business, and this was certainly an unplanned visit. Could this be something to do with the reforms? More to come on this later. Oh yes, more to come on this later indeed. Prepare for hell on earth. If you're of a certain diplomatic leaning, perhaps. Right, okay. That was a long meeting, as expected. 46 minutes of our hour is up, but we can continue onwards. What's next? Barbecue with Frank. Oh, okay. Bit of home time after the dramas. Right, where are we? So, Narbel. Lack of hospitals. Oh, that's a shame. Recession hits farmers again in Leshaven. Oh, that's quite sad. That's our home city. We're a bit sad about that, but hey, there's bigger threats at the moment going on in this place. Sana, Bludish resistance in sanctuaries. Priest arrested in Neurity sanctuaries after finding links to insurgent activities. Yes, this supports our position. This definitely supports our position in taking down the WPB and any blues associated with. Young Swords and NFP flags burned by Red Youth. They shall also be struck down where they stand soon enough. And communist books burned in Boring. Oh dear. That was clearly youth groups from your party. Yeah, just silly kids. You know, we just have to give them smacked hands. Right, Red Youth rises, warning bells for Swordland. Recent activities of the Red Youth seen rallying in Narbel have set alarm bells ringing. This is all good. We should be taking clips of these papers, and when people discuss what the hell's going on, we can just present them to them. Look, do you see this? Priests, Berger, recruitment, conversion to Golkondism or whatever it was. You know, AK-47s. Red Youth on the rise, protests, setting things on fire, well, whatever they did. You know, do I need say any more? School poisoning in Rybell, in Southern Berger. Oh dear. It's a pity when you don't, you know, you should be very careful with chicken. Upcoming government budget changes. There we go. We've got a government budget meeting coming soon. Workers' union put pressure for promised benefits. A labour strike at Gaslam imminent. United in protests. Narbel. Communist Party of Swordland Labour Union gathering. Things are picking up over that region. Women, time for them to stand up. A new campaign has been started in Swordland to establish a framework for women's rights. Swordish League of Women is organising rallies. Chiara Walder is involved. Questions over solist education. Minister Walder mentioned gaps in the system in her assembly debates. Yeah, solist education. Need to get rid of that system. Apparently, we're not overly fussed, but we you know. Education. And Raker emerges as buffer zone and global trade power. Pause and read at your pleasure. Grace nations unite to counter ideological influences. So this is the kingdom unity. And of course, Van Horten blames Valgsland for the missing fishing vessel. Agnolia, of course, at war, or well, kind of standing off and having tete-a-tete with Valgsland over, of course, Helliland. So there you go, there's your news. And also one more report. Legislative debate on the repeal of the EPA. Yes, we're not repealing it. We're keeping it as it is our ultimate stance here. We don't want any further foreign investment at this moment in time. 20% is more than ample. So, Richter, you're wasting your breath. Yes, it would foster economic growth. Of course it would, yes. And foreign control. as well. Anyway, enough about work. Time for a barbecue. It was Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. Trying to keep my mind off the upheaval sparked by the circus assassination, I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Dina were out shopping for craft supplies, and I'd given the staff the day off. It was just myself and Frank at home. I wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecued ribs. Our cook had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Well, look who's finally out of his room. You shouldn't talk, Dad. I never see you at home anymore. Well, I am sorry, but I'm happy to see you now. As I said, I think I mentioned it last session, but yeah, we're as much as we are harsh to others, we are a family man. Do our best for our family, and probably a little bit of a soft spot too. Although there will be certain things that crop up in the future that we'll have to take a stand on. It's okay. I know you've got the most stressful job in the country and you've got to feed your family on top of it all. We both chuckled, and I turned to tend to the fire. Here, let me try. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to look at me with a grin on his face, as if he was expecting praise. Don't act like you've done something special. Good job. I should actually said not bad. Not overly praised. Not bad, always room for improvement. Thank you, sir. It is in our utmost interest to fulfill our duties with precision. The grilling shall commence in exactly 1 minute and 32 seconds. That was a spot-on impersonation of Lucian. We looked at each other for a second, then burst out laughing. I realised my throat was parched. There was a 6-pack of beer in the kitchen. Frank, why don't you bring us a couple of beers? He looked at me in disbelief. You mean I can't? But Mum told me... He stopped himself quickly ran inside with 2 beers and returned. He grabbed 2 beers and returned. We cracked them open, clinked the bottles and gazed out at the city skyline. For a moment my thoughts flashed back to my childhood and my relationship with my own father. My father was a rich man. We never had to worry about food, clothes or anything. Yet he was nearly always away and constantly distracted on the rare occasions when he was at home. Now that I was the president, I was worried that I would end up just like my father, distant and absent from Frank's life. Hence why we're probably, when we are here, quite a family man. That's precious time we've got to spend together. It's got to mean something. It's got to be at least fun, pleasurable, memorable. Dad, can I ask you something? Go on. It's just, I feel like there's so much you've been hiding from me, about your past, about what's going on right now. Like at dinner that night after the ball, you told me everything was under control, but it wasn't, was it? I know what happened in the 20s. We learned all about it in school. Now with the protests and the riots, is it going to be the same thing? Dad, is there going to be a civil war in Swordland? I do wonder if that is an ultimate outcome, No. I will never let that happen. Good. But what was it like back then? Uncle Peter said the 2 of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore, you can tell me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the familiar images started flashing before my eyes. Images of soldiers advancing toward me and my friends, weapons drawn, of people I knew, friends and neighbours, being dragged through the streets and murdered in alleyways. And that little girl's face. Those were dark times. It seems like it. But you're nearly a grown man, so let's talk about it. Frank leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide. It was time to tell him about the coup of 27. I was barely older than you are now, studying economics at the Shaven Business School. I was a freshman, excited and young. I just left the classroom to go back home as I heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the campus gates. As they got closer, I realised they were military camouflage trucks and tanks, carrying hundreds of soldiers. The same soldiers that were supposed to protect Swordland citizens pointed their guns at us, Frank. They immediately took control of the facilities. One of my friends asked what was going on and was arrested immediately. More people got angry and gathered in protest. Frank kept listening, a shocked look on his face. Oh, we'll carry on. I was there with the protesters as they declared martial law. We marched toward them. They threatened us with force, but we stood our ground. So, they started beating anyone they saw, including me. The physical wounds took a few weeks to heal, but the mental scars have stayed with me to this day. I tried my best to stay strong. Some of my friends were shot, many more were arrested. I can't forget the screams to this day, but I am proud not to have faltered. Frank leaned back in his chair, his shoulders slumped heavily. And now I told him about the Civil War. It was right after I met your mother. We had both joined the same political debate group to push for change after the coup of 27. Eventually I became convinced I wasn't doing enough, so I joined the Young Swords. Then one night, it happened. Two different factions in the army, one of them led by fascist General Ludrin and the other by socialist General Ricard. They started fighting against each other. It was a bloodbath. Nowhere was safe. Rank shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. But we continued onwards with vigour. So we organised a protest one day against Ricard. We were fed up with the army toying with the country again. I won't tell him about the girl, though. I paused for a moment before continuing. And that was where I stopped. That's where I drew the line. It was horrible. They were waiting for us. Everything plunged into chaos. Soldiers started beating and shooting at everyone. I trailed off. There were some things my son didn't have to know. And that's enough for today. It's okay. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you about it. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. One more thing, though. I know you joined the Young Swords back then. Do you mind if I ask why? I had to survive somehow in that environment, Frank. And I made a choice. Frank raised his eyebrows, his curiosity still not satisfied, but seeing my reluctance to go on, he simply nodded. Sorry for bombarding you with questions. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. What problems? Before Frank could say anything else, I heard the front door unlock. Dina and Monica's voices and the sounds of rustling shopping bags filled the house. Oh, all right, I'll be upstairs until dinner. Frank went upstairs, and I took a sip from my beer. A long sip. Looking at the city and the now setting sun. I hope that talking to Frank about my past had been the right decision. Part of me felt as if some sort of burden had been lifted, but I had the same nightmares again that night. Bing, bing, bing. Right, we are at the hour mark. What's the next thing that we have to progress on? Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. My phone's ringing. Hang fire, hang fire. Hang fire. Oh, God. What's this? Presidential visit to Narbel. Oh, this might be interesting. Right. ATO pledges financial and military aid to Agnolia. Interesting. Our neighbours are getting financial and military aid from the ATO. That might be worth taking on board. Resia advocates for energy partnership. They have extended a co-investment proposal for Swordland's ambitious gas-on energy venture. Of course you do. Of course you do. What else we got? Antel. Riot in Antel Rock Prison. The warden was killed by a Bluish political prisoner. Oh, that's bad news. And in Morna, industrial output concerns. 12% lower than last year, apparently. They're requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel to combat the downwards trend. Not good. Right, USP report on reforms. Yeah, there's going to be no reform package, mate. We're pulling the plug. Right, underhaul report. It's been progressing well. They've been laying the foundations for the ground retaining walls, bridges and tracks. Most of the preliminary work has been done already and everything was going according to schedule. Right, 11 paper articles. We'll have to get to those in a second. Let me just check out what's going on here. And look at our growth line. It's levelled out a bit. Not bad, not bad. Okay, so back again. Sorry about that, I had to check something out. So we'll go for a little bit longer today. Green Act, a misdirected effort. So the Green Act, environmental conservation, the core of it, not interested. Attacker opened fire on protesters, 17 dead. A man opened fire in Vsword city centre during a protest march organised by the Communist Party of Swordland against the murder of Bernard Circus. Who is the attacker? Come on, I will give you freedom! Strict action has been asked to be taken. Tourism bill signing deserves applause. So yes, we have signed this Tourism and Culture Preservation Act by the President. We've signed that. A monumental step in the right direction, says our pro paper. Ah, yes, indeed. Tourist destination? You betcha. Just be careful not to be murdered on the streets right now. Green, a threat to growth. Don't worry, we're not signing it. You'll be happy about that, you economist types, you. Gasom in turmoil, a leadership crisis. Okay. In the Shaven, Reason Oil and Gas expresses interest in Gasom. Whereas we are not interested in a deal with them. Enrica Derby and Gelsord postponed due to the protests. A tragic day where the president himself refused to act in the face of communism. Oh, I'll be acting soon, Curtin, don't you worry. Oh, I'll be acting soon. You'll be made to choke on those words, sir. The imperative Green Bill awaits signature. It's going to be waiting a long time. And undemocratic elections. They're harping on about this 10% threshold. 9%. 8% for the Communist Party. It needs to be lowered. Nope, it's going to be staying the same because we ain't going ahead with the constitutional changes, so sorry about that, folks. CSP's worker report under scrutiny. And then Enrica broadens economic horizons. All a bit of flavour background, really. Okay, so, last act of the session. Narbel. We are visiting. For what purpose, though? I was travelling to the snow-covered city of Narbel in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organised by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. Oh, this is going to go well. The mountainous city of Narbel had gritty tones to it. It was mostly regarded as one of the poorer cities in Swordland. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gasom, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic. Fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, making sure that Narbel did not feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narbel's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty discoloured spots in the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Sergei rolled down the partition window. "We will be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." Can't say it's been a comfortable ride, Sergei. I am sorry, sir. The roads here aren't the best. After a moment, Sergei started to smile under his moustache. What's that smile for? Sir, I just want to say it has been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and and now my daughter has started at a very good high school in Hallsword. It's great news, Sergei. I'm happy for you. I appreciate it, sir. Truly. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exams, but I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Erika outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her. I also hope that Dina will grow to be like her mother someday. I'm sure she will, sir. After all, she is the daughter of a lion and a lioness. My daughter looks up to the First Lady for inspiration, and it's not just limited to my daughter, sir. She is an inspiration for almost all women in the country. But at the same time, it must be hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to this new high-profile life, and a husband that has great responsibility. It's hard for us both. It must be, sir. We sometimes forget the important people in life between all the responsibility and rush. You know, those we care for. Yes, I agree. Sergei continued after a moment of silence. Have I told you, sir? We named my son George. The doctor said he is very healthy, and thankfully so is my wife. That's good. I hope the hospital had a good service. Normally, we would have been treated in one of the suburban hospitals, but thanks to the special coverage of the presidential staff, we were transferred to Emerald State Hospital. That's a great hospital, I hear. The equipment and staff were exceptional. I've already started thinking about their university education, especially Erika. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it is going to be hard for us. So we can support him, or support the education. We could lavishly give them extra support, or we can not bother. Now, we're a greedy person, and splashing cash on your driver certainly isn't in our textbook here. I mean, if he'd saved our life or done something, took a bullet for us, that's different. He's just driven us about so far. So, we will fix the economy one way or another. Don't worry, Sergei. If anyone can, that's you, Mr. President. The car hit a major pothole and a bump which lifted us up in our seats for a second. Enough talking, Sergei. Focus on the road. Bloody hell. Oh, I'm sorry. I will drive more carefully, sir. The motorcade began approaching the hotel. The Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narbel. The large 25-storey main building was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protests when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel with the welcoming committee at its centre. As we approached the red-carpeted entrance, I could see the mayor of Narbel and his top aides. Sergei got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. Thank you. Have a good day, Mr. President. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narbel filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles and handshakes, while I donned the mask of a politician. A mask that I was very used to. Indeed, indeed. Right, this is the welfare briefing. As I said, this will be very interesting. Okay, Narbel. Yeah, that's the welfare briefing. Couple of briefing notes here. We'll get these done now, and then we'll end the session, and we'll start the next session for that briefing. But Piff Chib reports on reforms. He wants term limits and limited decrees. As I said, obviously they're none the wise at the moment, but we know that they ain't getting nothing because those reform committees have been brought to a close, I'm afraid. Young sword suspected of terror attack? No, can't be. Can't be. Further investigations are underway. Okay. Protests appear calmer. So we got a few incidents of violence in Dare and Lashaven. Okay, Dare is the hometown of circus. A memorial march happened. Bit of discord there. Whole sword is now calmer. Okay, lots of arrests have been made. This is good. This is good news. Education privatisation proven successful, apparently. But considering that we are looking for a planned doctrine, we don't want to be privatising anything. Or maybe we could go 50-50 actually. Maybe we could go 50-50 with privatisation. I think we're going to get the option to privatise education and health, and we could either say no to privatisation to both, or maybe we could privatise one, perhaps. Especially if it brings extra cash our way. We might go 50-50 here. We'll play it by ear, and we might be able to get a kind of a feel for it in the welfare briefing. But yeah, our privatisation plan might be quite interesting. Radical Saul needs to answer for his crimes. He's immune and will remain immune. Shocking misogyny rally. Counter-protests occurred apparently to the Swordfish League of Women's protests. Scuffle broke out. Labour Union Rights March. Poor conditions of workers' rights. This is the Taurus team. This is the team that were one of the three that could have built our new railway line. You see, if I had these guys, this is what would have happened. Too busy in crowds, in marches, not enough time spent working. Yeah, good job we didn't pick you guys, isn't it? Indeed. Right, there you go, there's your papers, and there's your briefing. So in the next session we start right here in the welfare briefing, where welfare, I've got to say, isn't top of our list of priorities. Because we need to fund the military, as we promised, but given our stance, we also need to fund our police. So they'll be getting hikes to their budgets, I'm thinking, which means that we're going to have to cut 2 areas, which leaves education and health floundering. But hey, what can you do? Priorities at the time, I'm afraid, and the priorities right now is not education and health, it's fighting the threats, both external and internal. Right, our path has been charted. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. This is completely different now to our first playthrough. So, yeah. But hey, growth. We're growing. Clearly we're doing something right. How long will it last? Anyway, that's it for today. Find out how we proceed onwards with these plans with Hawker in the next session. Until then, I'll see you soon.